Hey everyone, it's Smitha. Today I'm going to be talking about the new collection from Beaute Bar that is launching this Friday, June 12th. I know there's a lot of indie releases that are happening right now, and I have had some requests to do some detailed swatches of especially the single eyeshadows. So let me tell you about what is launching in this collection. First, we have an eyeshadow palette, and this is a large eyeshadow palette. This is a rainbow palette that is 36 pans. Beaute Bar has done kind of larger palettes in a similar format before, but they don't currently carry any. Now, I do have to mention there was an issue with the artist and the cover of this palette that the brand was unaware of and is rectifying. I recommend watching, if you're curious, Jen Love's reviews does a nice kind of covering of this briefly on her Sunday video. So if you don't know about it and you'd like to hear more information, I would check that video out. I also do want to mention, I feel like the brand has dealt with this both promptly and well. We also have 15 single shadows, and I do feel like it's been quite a while since we've had this many single shadows from the brand. So I am excited about that because I haven't had a chance to play around with these, and there are some really pretty shades in here, and because there's no shimmers in the palette, I love that we have some more options for shimmer single shadows. And last but not least, we have two lip balms, one that is a teal and one that is an orange. I'm going to do detailed swatches, try everything on, and do 1 to 2 looks at the end. So let's go ahead and get into it. I do want to mention that I have a discount affiliate code, so I'm going to go ahead and pop it up on the screen now. Thank you so much if you use it. It really does support my channel. At this point, I've also already done eye swatches of all 15 shades. My eyes are healing a little bit. I'm happy to say that it's going to be a little while until I do another round of eye swatches like these. And here is what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. In my opinion, I don't feel like there's too much redundancy. I really like how bright the tones in here are. I really love the lime green, and I wouldn't have minded having a few more kind of like neon pops. All right, now we're gonna dive right into doing some detailed swatches of these 15 single shadows. I have not seen specific prices for these, but when I do, I will put them in some type of pinned comment. I think basically what we're getting here is the rainbow spectrum of shimmer shadows. And I have to say, this batch definitely has some of my favorite single shadows that I've tried from Beaute Bar. The first shade we have is Iridescent Veil, and this I would describe as being an iridescent shadow that is packed with kind of cool-toned, leaning, multicolored sparkles. I'm seeing predominantly pinky red, purple, and blue multicolored sparkles. And with this shade, I don't see much of a chrome shift, but those sparkles do make it look a little bit more multi-dimensional. The sparkle particles, I would say, are about medium in size. Next shade we have is Moonbeam Glow, and this, I would say, in contrast to Iridescent Veil, is much warmer toned. It has sort of a peachy orange base with predominantly a yellow-green shift. You can see those shifts best when I use the mirror to the shadow applied to my lid. This shade is also packed with multicolored sparkles that are about medium in size. In contrast to the first shade, the sparkles in this shade are all kind of warm tone leaning. Okay, and the next shade we have is Citrine Radiance. This is what I would describe as a very yellow leaning green, and it has what I would describe as kind of a pink leaning shift. This shade also has holographic reflect throughout. I have always said that I really like the hollow shades from Beaute Bar, so I am definitely really happy to see that some of the single shadows included in this collection are hollows. I personally see this shade as being a crowd favorite. Next shade we have is called Bright Halo. This is what I would describe as a kind of glowy, yellowy orange that has multicolored sparkles throughout. I did end up enjoying these mixed pan shades quite a bit because I found in general that these shades look quite glowy on the skin. This shade has multicolored sparkles throughout. I don't think I see holographic reflex in this shade, so if I was comparing this shade to the one before it, Citrine Radiance, I would say that is one of the main differences. Citrine Radiance also has a bit more green in it. Next shade is Crystal Moss. This is another one of the mixed pan shades, and just like I mentioned before, I really like that these shades tend to be a little bit extra glowy. This shade I would describe as kind of a light to mid-toned grungy green, and it has predominantly green and golden sparkles throughout. And I'm seeing a slight golden shift, but not really a strong chrome shift for this shadow. All right, next shade we have is Electric Fern, and I can say this is easily my favorite green shadow of the bunch. I would describe this as a bit of a deeper green, almost a teal, not quite, and it has such a gorgeous electric blue shift. And I definitely have tried green to blue shifting shadows for sure, but there is something that is extra special about the shift in this one. I do really like that it has some sheerness to it again because it just gives it a little bit of extra glowiness. All right, next shade we have is called Celestial Current. It's another one of the mixed pan shades. I would describe this as an incredibly glowy blue. I just kind of swirled my finger in the whole pan because I feel like that is the easiest way of using the shade. As you can see, not much of a chrome shift in this one, but I just love the glowiness and brightness of this shadow. Electric Lagoon is another kind of glowy blue shadow, and I think you can see when I swatch it that it does have a fair bit of similarity to the shadow that I swatched before it, Celestial Current, to the point where I feel like having both would be a little bit redundant. But as you can see, this shade has just a little bit more depth to it. It also shifts between different tones of blue, and texture-wise it does feel just a little bit smoother, so maybe that might help you decide which of the two shades you prefer. Next we have Sapphire Flash, which is very aptly named. It's a rich jewel-toned blue shade. I absolutely love this tone of blue. It's definitely a tone that I just couldn't get tired of. I do want to mention that this one has a flaky texture. I'm not in love with this texture, so it is something to keep in mind because I feel like this texture wouldn't work for everyone. It reminds me a lot of a shade like Tiara from Clionadh. So I love the shade, I just don't love the texture. All right, next shade we have is Lunar Violet. I would describe this as a rich jewel-toned purple shade, and it has multicolored cool-toned sparkles throughout. And I don't see much of a chrome shift with this shade, similar to Sapphire Flash. I do find the texture of this shade to feel much more manageable than Sapphire Flash. They're completely different. The sparkle particles in this shade I would describe as having a medium size. Crystal Rose is a split pan pink tone shade. When I swatched and tried this one on, it definitely read like an iridescent pink to me. I did find the shade to be a little bit more textured than the other shadows like it. You can see that when I swatch it, but I did find that it smoothed out well with my finger. And I gotta say, this shade really did look beautiful on the lid. Sunflare I would describe as kind of a burnt orangey red, and it's packed with holographic reflex throughout, and it has predominantly a yellow-orange shift. I've come to realize that some of my favorite holographic shadows are the ones that don't really look like they're gray base. So something I really enjoy about the holos from Beaute Bar is that they do a lot of colorful ones that don't look like they're gray outside of direct light. All right, next shadow we have is Magenta Mirage. This one is definitely one of my favorites, I think because it has an ultraviolet shift. This shade I would describe as a semi-sheer bright pink, and it has a gorgeous ultraviolet shift. This shade I definitely see as being a crowd favorite. It also has quite a smooth texture to it. Seriously, give me an ultraviolet shift any day, and it's probably going to be one of my favorite shades. All right, Solar Zest I definitely see as being another crowd favorite. It's a bright orangey red, and it has an orange-yellow leaning shift. And it has quite a smooth texture. Tone and shift wise, I would definitely say that there is some similarity between this shade and the one that Terra Moons is coming out with on the same day. Not direct dupes, but definitely some similarities. All right, and last but not least, we have the shade Ruby Glow. I would describe this as a deep, grungy red tone shade that has holographic reflex throughout. Because of the red tone of this shadow, I do see this one as being another crowd favorite. But as you can see, the tone of this one is completely different than the red leaning shade that I tried on before, Solar Zest. And here's what all 15 single shadows look like swatched on my arm. Now, I have had some questions about if I can do some comparisons to those shades from Terra Moons. I haven't decided exactly how I would do that. Maybe I would do that in a post on YouTube, or maybe as a YouTube short. Let me know what you might prefer. All right, this collection also includes 2 sparkly lip balms, and Beaute Bar has done balms like these before. The first shade is called Daydream. I would describe this as almost a teal, and it has really pretty pink sparkles throughout. And I gotta say, I don't feel the sparkles in the shade whatsoever. Previously, I've mentioned that I have felt the sparkle in some of their other shades. The second shade we have is called Sunshine. This is a super bright orange shade. It has just a hint of red in it. Because I have quite a warm undertone, I do feel like this shade is harmonious on my skin tone. But honestly, I really like both of these shades because they are so unique, and Beaute Bar has not done shades like them before. These are, in my opinion, simply the most unique shades that they've done. All right, now I'm going to dive into doing a couple of eye looks. The first thing that I'm going to do, especially because I'm playing around with a bunch of colorful mattes, is use a little bit of this Danessa Myricks Color Fix. This is one of the nudes, and I'm going to use this to prime my lids. I also, not going to lie, I have a little bit of eyelid healing that I'm doing from the eye swatches. And by the way, this is the shade Nude 4, which is basically a little bit lighter than my natural lid color, but I'm just going to use that as a base. All right, and because we have a rainbow palette, I think the first look that I want to do is a matte heavy rainbow look. I'm going to start off with this lightest purple here. It's called Periwinkle Path. I have an overall smaller brush, and I'm just going to pack that onto the inner portion of the lid. I think the trick will be to not take up too much space with each color, otherwise I'm not going to have room to fit all of the colors. Now I'm going to dip into Sky Passage. Actually, I think I'll dip into the one right below that called Rain Wash. It has a little bit more depth. And just, again, pack that on. What I'll do after I put these on is work on blending over top a little bit just to make them a little bit more seamless. All right, now I'm going to dip into some of these greens. There's some gorgeous greens in this palette. I'm going to use Verdant Voltage. I really do feel like using the Color Fix nudes just is allowing some of these shades to pop a little bit more. All right, now we're using Electric Meadow, which is probably my favorite matte shade in the palette. It's this beautiful lime green. All right, now I'm going to go in with the yellow matte called Lemon Lift. And I'm not an expert in doing rainbow looks, but I feel like part of the trick is to blend but not over blend, because you do want to see the distinct colors. Now I'm dipping into the orange matte called Solar Flare. Ooh, love the way that shade pops. Scarlet Spectrum, which I would describe as kind of like a reddish coral. All right, and the last shade I'm going to use is Flame Fold, which is going to be my red toned matte, and this is the brightest red toned matte in the palette. I'm just taking a clean brush and I'm going to try to diffuse the edges a bit. And then I'm going to use that same brush and just go over the edges between the colors just to get a little bit more of a seamless blend. Okay, I actually like that look all by itself, but I feel like it wouldn't be me if I didn't use a little bit of shimmer. So I'm going to take this shade called Celestial Current and just put a little bit on the brow bone. This is like one of those very glowy blues that just works beautifully as an iridescent, especially on brown skin. Love that. And then I'm just going to pop a little tiny bit in the inner corner. And here is the first completed look. All right, and for my second look, I also want to do something matte heavy. I think I want to focus on the greens. I'm going to start off with that beautiful lime green called Electric Meadow and put that on the inner portion of the lid. Okay, I'm going to be using less shades overall for this look than I did for the first look. But oh, that is beautiful. And I love that I'm giving it a little bit more of a moment to shine because I feel like a good lime matte is just kind of hard to come by. I mean, you can find them, but I feel like one that really pops, performs well, hard to come by. I feel like just wearing this matte all over the lid all by itself would be such a vibe. And I'm just taking my time to really blend around the edges. Now I'm just going to go in with a little bit of this shade Verdant Voltage just to create a little tiny bit of a gradient because I am going to use a deeper green matte, but I don't want there to be too harsh of a transition between the two shades. All right, and now I'm going in with the shade Emerald Echo, and I'm using a slightly smaller brush just to get maybe just like the tiniest bit more precision, because I feel like otherwise it would be pretty easy to go overboard with that shade. And just pressing it on. And now I'm just dipping in with my fluffier brush that I was using before and blending out around the edges. All right, and now I'm going to do pretty much opposite of what I did on the lid along the lower lash line. So I'm going to start with the deeper shade Emerald Echo and just put that on the inner portion. A little bit of Verdant Voltage kind of in the center. And then right in that outer corner, I'm going to use Electric Meadow again and just connect that. And then I'm just going to take that same lime matte and just drag it down kind of into my blush. Now I'm going to take that same matte and put a little bit under the brow bone near that darker green matte. All right, I do want to do a pop of shimmer. I'm going to use this shade called Crystal Moss, which is a glowy green. It's like the green equivalent of the shade that I used in the first look. And what I want to do is play around with shimmer placement. I want to just take a little bit and drag it down. All right, now I'm just finishing off the look with this Urban Decay eyeliner in the waterline. This is called Stash, which is a grungy green, which I think will go well with the shades that I have along the lower lash line. All right, and here is the second completed look. All right, now that I've had a chance to do some detailed swatches of everything and 2 looks, I want to close up with some wrap-up thoughts. So let's go ahead and start with the palette. I don't think that this palette is necessarily going to be for everyone. This is a large rainbow palette. I myself typically prefer curated palettes. However, I have been finding in general that I do really like that when I'm trying to create a certain look, especially a colorful look, having a palette like this is incredibly helpful. Of course, you don't need to have a ton of palettes like this. I feel like one will suffice. But in terms of the quality of the shadows in here, I think everything that I used performed really, really well. And when I did swatches, I was very impressed with how all of the shadows swatched. I like that this is quite a vibrant rainbow. I really enjoyed dipping into some of these brighter shades for my looks, and I feel like I got a good sense for them after creating my 2 looks. And in case you didn't know, all of these pans are magnetic, so you can just take out a few, mix and match, make your own palette, etc. So that is a really nice perk to this palette. All right, now the single shadows. There are 15 single shadows in this collection. I was so incredibly impressed with these single shadows. It's been a little while since I've tried a single shadow collection from the brand. I can definitely tell that there's going to be some shades in here that will be favorites of mine, especially from the brand, but also in general. Let me just tell you right off the bat, I love Electric Fern. That's the green shade that has a really strong blue shift. I love the glowy blues. The other shade that I was a huge fan of was this pink that with an ultraviolet shift. That is the shade Magenta Mirage. Really, really fantastic shade. I think the red tone in here that has the fiery shift, kind of the orange red, will be another crowd favorite. I think there's just a lot of really great shades in here. Really fun. Very, very happy to have more single shadows from the brand. And then last but not least, the lip balms. No joke, I think these are my favorite lip balms that they've come out with. Not that I didn't like the other shades, but I've just never seen shades quite like these before. I like that they really went for it with doing different shades this time. I was surprised how well the orange looked on me. I mean, I shouldn't be. I have quite a warm undertone, so this is the one that sort of like is most harmonious with me and my skin tone, although I still really quite enjoyed this blue one or the teal one, and of course, you know, blue is my favorite color, so that's no surprise. Now, I would love to hear what your favorite part of this collection is. Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you plan to pick anything up, if you'll be skipping on the collection. Would love to chat more in the comments. And if you made it to the end of the video, I would love if you would leave me an orange heart or some type of orange emoji for this orange lip balm called Sunshine. As always, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.